Do you know what the best possible advice you can get is? It's homework advice, of course. Let's get started on this week's homework advice. In this homework, we introduce a concept known as sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is basically the process of extracting meaning from words, if you will, in the form of whether they have a positive or negative connotation. So the basics of the meaning are relatively binary. Like, are they happy thoughts, or are they negative thoughts, for example, based on the words? So there's actually a lot of science behind this, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. And we're really just kind of introducing the topic to you and getting you sort of interested in it. Later on, we will do this and use a web service to do it, because, why write it yourself when you can find several examples out there that do it much better. So basically, to give you some inspiration for the problem, you are going to have a list of words you consider positive and words you consider negative. So you might look over this list and pick out some positive words like amaze, and then look over this other list I provided and get some negative words like, ache. And then from that, you will take some input like my body aches, and from that input, you will score the text, and you will give +1 to every positive word, -1 to every negative word, and 0 if the word is neither positive nor negative or not in your list. And then you will get an overall score that represents the sentiment of the text provided. So that's basically the approach that we want you to take. Now, again, you cannot code a problem that you don't understand. So first and foremost is, do you have an understanding of the problem? That's the first thing that you need to check yourself for before you write any program at all. Down here we get into the details. I'm like, use a function, write some tests for the function. None of that crap matters if you don't understand what the program is going to be doing big picture wise. So let's suppose I had some positive words like this: happy, joy, fun. And then I had some negative words like this: sad, dislike, and cheese. Again, I'm making up any words I want. Let's suppose that I input this text. My text input is going to be cheese makes me sad. How would we score that input? Okay, think about that. How would we score that input? So, let's play computer here. You take a look at the first word, cheese. Is this cheese? No. Is this cheese? No. Is this cheese? Nope. Therefore, it is not a positive word. Is this cheese? Nope. Is this cheese? Nope. Is this cheese? Yep. That's a negative word. So right now the score after the first word, is -1. Right? Because the score started out at 0. Okay, let's do makes. Is that makes? No. Is that makes? Nope. 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 So makes gets the score 0. So we add 0 to this, and now the score, -1 plus 0, okay, which is still equal to -1. Okay, same thing happens with me. Let's go to sad. So is this sad? No. 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 Is this sad? Yes, that's sad. Do I need to check this and this? No, I don't. I could break the loop at that point. Right? And then this says sad, so we add a -1 because it's negative. So score equals score -1. Right, so it's minus 1 minus 1. So score is now -2. And then the program's done because we're out of text input. And our score is -2. Now do you understand how the program works? Because again, if you can't play computer, you got no shot in solving this problem with code. Okay, you have to be able to think algorithmically first. Now, we'll get all into all the requirements up here, but my suggestion is to write the code, write the solution without using any of the requirements. Okay, don't use IPython interact, don't use a custom function, don't do any of that stuff. All right? Because it's about understanding the problem, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use, again, our tried and true approach of write the code, refactor the code, test it, and then rewrite it. Okay, and we're going to do that the first time around for the score sentiment function. So, okay, so the first time we're going to do it for score sentiment. Then we're going to do it a second time for IPython interact. So we're going to write refactor. We don't need to test it. We could really just write and refactor and rewrite for interact. Write, refactor, rewrite. And then this time we're going to do it for interact. This is going to be your approach. All right? So again, the first thing is get it working without all that bells and whistles. Then once you get it working without all the bells and whistles, then you can rewrite it. We can refactor it into a function, test that function, and rewrite it with that function. Then once we get that working, we should do another rewrite where we use the interact manual function. Okay, that's my advice. Take it or leave it. So let's sort of continue on and think about algorithmically how we solve this problem. So we have 3 inputs. We have a set of positive numbers, or a positive words, negative words, and then what you just regularly input, right? So up here we're going to have in inputs, we're going to have positive words, negative words, and then we're also going to have our raw text. And then our outputs, that's going to just be the sentiment score, which is an integer. Okay, now we have to think about an algorithm here. Now, one other technique that we learned here is when you've got a lot of inputs, you want to use the problem simplification approach, right? And in this particular example, for problem simplification, we are going to constrain the inputs. So rather than just always entering in a bunch of positive words and negative words, we're going to constrain our inputs using variables. And then we will only take input on the actual text. Okay, and we could argue that maybe even that is too much as we're writing out our algorithm /code/program. So I still don't know how to write this as an algorithm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with some Python code to give me some inspiration. It's not necessarily true. I do know how to write it as an algorithm, but that's because, I wrote the assignment. Okay, but let's think about how you might go about this if you didn't know how to write this as an algorithm. So you're going to have your list of positive words, right, and your list of negative words, and those could be anything, and I'm just going to use these for start. Just keep the list small. And then you're going to take text as input. Enter text. And let's think about this. What if we entered for our input? Let's suppose our text that we enter for input is I am happy. Okay, I am happy. The first thing we need to do is we need to break this up into individual words so that we can iterate over them. Because each time we iterate over them, we're going to check for this word in the list of positive or in the list of negative. Ooh, that was good. Maybe I want to write that down. So I'm just going to sort of think in code, right? We need to split text into words. Okay? So how do we do that? Words, text split. We did that in the lab. And we're going to split them on a space. So let's print words. See what we got. Okay, now I've got individually separated words into a list, which I can now iterate over with a loop. So I can say for word in words. Let's print each individual word. I am happy. Right, so now I have my splitting the text into the words, and then loop over each word. What do I need to do with each of these words? What am I checking I for? What am I checking I for? Well, I want to see if I is on the list of positive or the list of negative words, right? But these are just strings. I need to turn them into list with split, right? Okay, so let's play around some more. Let's use one of the words. Let's make one of the words I. Okay, this is how you think this through. So let's turn positive into a list. Let's say is word in positive split? Is it in that list? False. See that? It says false. So is happy in positive split? That says true because happy is in here. Now, why did I have to split it? Because you can't look for word in like that. That works. But it's also going to find, like if I look for a J, it's going to find a J in there because there's a J for joy, right? You have to split them into words and look for them. So maybe what you want to do is you want to start by saying positive equals happy, joy, fun, dot split this into a list, right? And then negative, and then split that into a list. There's like 100 ways you can do it. You decide how you want to do it. All I'm telling you is that the easiest approach is to break the big long text into individual word tokens so that you're comparing token to token, right? Because when you do word in this, it's comparing them by letter. You don't want them by letter. So now when I word in post, it'll say false. Right? And I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this, I'm going to print this. I'm going to print word and then word in posts. So I is not in positive, am is not in positive, but happy is in positive. And then I'm going to do the same thing for negative. Print word in negative. Okay, I is not in positive, I is not in negative, am is not in positive, am is not in negative. Happy is in positive, happy is not in negative. Okay, there's no point in checking the negative if it's in the positive, and the negative, but that's not going to hurt anything, I guess. It doesn't, it's just extra loops, if you will. Now, we don't want to print them. We want to do like some kind of decision, right? So hopefully this is starting to sort of pan out as an algorithm, right? So let's think about this as an algorithm. And I'll give you this algorithm to chew on as part of the homework advice. This will be some big advice, okay? So you're going to input some text, right? And then you're going to say for individual, break text up into words. Break text into words. For word in text. For word in words. if word in positive list of words, what are we going to do? Else if word in negative list of words, what are we going to do? And then else, what are we going to do? Our goal is to get a sentiment score, right? So if the word is in the list of positive words, we want to add one, or increment the positive, the score. If it's in the negative list, we want to subtract one or decrement the score. And else we're just going to keep the score the same, right? I don't know how you would write that in code. I'm going to leave that up to you, right? Else we do nothing. Right? If it's not in the positive list or negative list, we're just going to leave score the way it is. Right? So this is basically your algorithm, and then when you're all done, you're going to print out the score, right? Print the score. Okay. So now think about this. Can you write this in Python? That's step one. So again, let's go back to the approach, because this is where a lot of you have trouble with the bigger programs, is in the approach. So step one, I'm gonna rewrite them out down here. Step one, write algo above as code. Get it working and know it works. Okay, then step two, refactor into a function. Okay, what is the function called? Get sentiment, and it passes in the positive list, the negative list, the positive list, the negative list, and the input text. Okay, there's a lot of ways that you can think about get sentiment, right? But it does say up in the requirements that you are required to give it 3 inputs, right? And it will return an integer sentiment. So you need to figure out, I already know the answer, but you need to figure out what part of this code belongs in the function. Okay, what are we inputting? What are we outputting, right? So these things go in, what comes out? Sentiment score. Okay, then what you should do is when you mentally refactor it into a function, right? If you can't mentally refactor it into a function and write the code, think about this. If I were to say get sentiment, and I were to give it a positive list of happy and a negative list of sad, really simple, and then the text I gave it was, I am happy, what's the score going to be? What's that score going to be? Is this in the list of positive? No. Is this in the list of positive? No. Is this in the list of positive? Yes. There's one. Is this in the list of negative? No. Is this in the list of negative? No. Is this in the list of negative? No. So the score here should be a 1. All right. That tells me that you understand the function from a black box perspective, what it's going to do. Now you write it. Okay? Then after you write the function, now write function, def, da, 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 da. And then after you write the function, you need to test it. So you should test it by calling it. Like when I call get sentiment, I expect it to, this gives me a 1. And up here are the rules by which I want you to call it. I want you to call it and get scores of +2, -2, and 0 with at least 3 tests. So your test could be something as simple as just doing this. You might say, print, I expect a 2, and then I actually get you know, get sentiment. And then how are you going to call it, right? And then what you might put in the expect for a little more details, you might expect to when I input text, I am happy and full of joy. And maybe the words are happy and joy. And so that's why you expect when you get the sentiment, it's going to be 2. Okay. But again, you're going to make all this up. But you should have pretty much to test it, you should have 3 print statements, right, that show me that it works. And this is similar to what we did in the previous lab. Okay. Now, when you get this far, you should rewrite the program that you wrote originally so that it calls your function. So this part is going to be something like this. You know, you're going to input some text, then you're going to call get sentiment, then you're going to print the score. That's basically it. This is your rewrite algo. This is why this algorithm is dumb, right? Because all of the thinking is done here, right? Which we already laid out that algorithm right here. Okay. Once you get that working, you then rewrite it again. Then finally, rewrite again with IPython interact. Okay. And remember, at this point, you probably want to get all of your code in one cell, right? So at the top, you have your imports, like from IPyWidgets import interact manual. And then you might say, I don't know, from whatever, import whatever, or you might say import something, right? You might have other imports. Then in the middle, you have your function, user-defined functions. So you're going to have def get sentiment. And you're already going to know it works, right? Because you're just really just going to copy it in here. Why do you copy it in here? So that everything's all in one cell. It's all nice and easy and convenient. Okay. And then down here, now you're going to run your interact, right? And your interact is going to say, you know, basically all an interact is it's your user-defined function. You can call it whatever. Go do it. Go do it. And then what do I need to go do it? I need to give it a positive list of words, a negative list of words, and the input text, right? And then you're going to say, let's decorate this function, right? So this is the go do it. Go do it is going to be this code right here, but where are you getting the input from? The input comes from the interaction itself, right? When you run the interaction, I'm just going to put pass in here. I'm just going to leave it like that. When you run the interaction itself, right? You give it defaults for input. So my positive words might be, I don't know, happy, joy, fun. And then my negative words might be sad, angry, mad, I don't know. And then my text, I'm just going to leave that empty. And down here, this is where you're going to actually do your program. Your program's going to go in here. So you don't need to input. Why don't you need to input? Because that's what Interact Manual does, right? It's a magic function that rather than you having to type the input statements, it generates them automatically for you based on these conventions. And then the output happens when you click the button. When you click the button, it runs go do it, basically. So I'm going to run this, right? And see, and I have my positive words in here, and I can add more. Elated. And then I can add more negative words, bummer. And then I can put in my text like, this is a joy bummer. And then I can run my interact, right? And it'll say sentiment score is 0 or whatever it is in this case, right? But in here, you're just going to execute the code that calls the sentiment function and prints the score out, right? That's all you need to do down here in this area, right? You can get rid of pass. Pass just means I don't have anything to write yet, but I want to run it. Okay, so once you get code written, you don't use pass anymore. You take pass out. Pass doesn't belong there anymore. All right? So that's basically it in a big, fat, ugly nutshell, right? And yes, this is how it ends up when you're all done. But to get here, to do it right and to get here requires a lot of extra code that you're going to write and throw away and maybe not share with me, or maybe you are going to share with me. It's really up to you. But basically, I highly encourage you to first write the program so that it works without using, any fancy interact or functions. Just get the problem solved. Okay? And if you have problems getting the problem solved, reach out and say, I can't get the problem solved. But if you're saying I'm having trouble with my function and you don't even know what goes in your function, that's not helpful for you and it's not helpful for us. We can't help you that way because the only way we can solve your problem is to give you the answer, and that's not helpful. Okay? So figure out how to write it so that it works first. Then after you figure out how to write it so that it works, input the text, output the score, rewrite it as a function. Okay, rewrite it as a function. Test that function to make sure that it works. Sanity check it. Then finally, rewrite all of it. Okay? At the top, you have your imports. In the middle, you have your get sentiment. And at the bottom, you have your interaction. This interaction is basically replacing what you would normally type in as inputs for these boxes. And then when this button is clicked, it executes the code under the def. That's all it's doing. Okay? That's a huge help, but hopefully that gets you all the way there and helps you figure out how to write this particular problem and use IPython Interact along the way. And if you want to make it look fancy, you might want to put something up here like print sentiment analyzer. Like that. You want to probably put a message up there when it runs like that. So it says, hey, it tells you what it's doing. And that's the homework advice for this week. I hope it was useful. Thanks for watching. Bye.